and welcome to lucky episode 13 of This Week in Perfect Team. I am your host, DRC, and we are the show that provides instant community feedback on all new content releases, and Chris just gave us a juicy one tonight with the 5 special edition cards that dropped tonight. With me, as always, is Your Kidneys. How are we doing tonight, Your Kidneys?
I'm doing very good. My dad just called you a boomer in the chat, so I'm very proud of him for calling your music boomer music.
Ouch.
He's a lot older than you are.
Ouch.
So that feels good, man.
That's a stinger that it's going to take me a while to get over. While I am trying to get over it, though, I do need to thank Chuck. Chuck has gifted now 6 subs within the chat today. Very, very nice of you, Chuck. And for those lucky enough to receive those subs, Lobat, OTP, Meme Lord, Seagram99, Valork77, and Mr. Fancier, welcome to the clubhouse. And look at that, we've got Rocketer gifting out some subs too. So thank you guys for building up our level 3 hype train here. But we have got a great show for you guys tonight. For anyone that's new to the show, drop us a follow, and we will walk you through how we do things here. So what is on tonight's show? We're going to do a card rundown of the 5 new cards we got tonight. How good are they? Where do they play? Why do you want them? Why should you maybe not want them? We're going to go through all of that and more. Then we're going to stop at the middle and we're going to play OK Boomer, OK Zoomer, which is everybody's favorite game show. And the theme of tonight's episode, tonight's segment, is Gotta Have It products from the 90s. You know what they are. If you lived through the 90s, you'll see them and you'll know right away. But our buddy Kidneys, who was but a wee little lad in the 90s. I don't even think you were alive in the 90s. He's gonna struggle with it.
I was 1 years old.
I think we're gonna get him tonight. And all 3 submissions tonight, all 3 submissions on my side came from the community. So if we win tonight, it's gonna be a team win, and if we lose, it's all your fault. And then lastly, we're going to finish up with holiday wish lists for that picky perfect team player on your Christmas list. What we've done is Kidneys and I have talked about 5 things each that we want to see changed into Perfect Team 22. And we'll talk about why it is we've chosen those and how near and dear those are to our heart. As we've got a lot more action in the chat. Holy cow, we've got Mac Jax dropping a gift bomb of 5 subs to Preacher Boy 12, Saintly Sam, Zany Ninja, Sid the Lizard, Darth Cansoups. Probably saying that wrong. And then we've got Braviloquent subscribing with his Amazon Prime, as is Jefferson Jim. For anyone who doesn't know, Amazon Prime does give you a free subscription. If you click the subscribe button and you go down to the Amazon area, you can just click that button and all of a sudden you're supporting this wonderful, fine channel. All right, so what do we do on this channel? What other broadcasts do we have? Well, we've got this show that we're doing right now, and we will be off next week, as Chris is off next week, and back on New Year's Eve. And then on Sunday, I broadcast the Perfect League World Series, and I do that on the Out of the Park Twitch channel. And that's always a lot of fun, so make sure you check that out. And then on Tuesday, we have an interview-based show where we talk to people that are big personalities within the community or people very connected to Out of the Park. This past Tuesday, we had on the gentleman that does all of the card art for Perfect Team. So every card that you see, this guy puts his fingerprints all over them in designing the templates, in designing the artwork that's within them, the portraits, everything. It was a real fun watch. If you missed it, go check it out. We are off for that show next week as well, but on the 29th, we will have Doc Fury, a tournament savant, a main league excellent player, member of the DLL. Going to be a great show. You don't want to miss that. I think that's all I need to get started. I think it's time to get started. And we've got Rocketer throwing more subs in the chat. Thanks, Rocketer. All right, so first card tonight, we got Chris Sale. And let me tell you, I love the fact that we have a Chris Sale in the game now, a Chris Sale that we can use. We had one before, but we've got a much more powerful one here. And as I look at this card, I see that there are some good comps here. So our comps play within the Perfect League. The way to use the table that's on the right side of your screen is these are the cards most similar to this card. And then if that card that's most similar to this card also plays in Perfect League, we have imported their success or failure within the Perfect League in the light blue column labeled PEL FIP. So let's take a look at this here. What I see when I see Chris Sale is I see a slightly off-brand version of David Price. So with any card in general, you want to know how good they're going to be versus their strong side. So if this is a lefty pitcher, how dominant are they going to be versus lefties? And the answer to that question for Chris Sale is going to be slightly less dominant than David Price. So let's, for a second here, look at this column where I've got my cursor now, the versus left-handed batter area, where Sale is rocking a 150, 83, 97. Well, David Price is going to bring you 143, 90, 106. So that's 9 more control, 7 more movement, and a negligible difference on the stuff. So Sale is not going to be the same dynamo versus left-handed batters that David Price is. Well, let's look at how good he is versus right. And there's a similar story to be told there. So David Price actually has slightly better control at 92 instead of 91 here, slightly worse movement, and then very comparable stuff. And for anyone that's tried to run David Price in the rotation in a non-lefty cheese park, it's not exactly recommended. So as I look at this card here, I see a card that is absolutely a part of perfect league bullpens and maybe even a part of perfect league rotations with the right home stadium setup. But I am not rushing to grab this one as a deploy it, set it and forget it type lefty. What do you think, Kidneys?
So I think you hit a lot of good points. I think the biggest issue for Sale for me is his 82 stamina. I think we've seen more and more importance of stamina go on as the league sort of normalized, and there's a lot of cards with very high stamina that you see as starting pitchers now, and having about 10 below average, what you see for your high-end starting pitchers, is really going to hurt you a lot. So I don't really think this card can start with the 80 stamina and the very diversive splits versus right-handed pitching. But I think out of the bullpen, this is a very good card. I did not compare him to David Price when I was running my pregame stuff because I think David Price never leaves your bullpen if you're not starting him. I think David Price is a must-have, must-use card. So for me, I compared him to Carlton, I compared him to the Newhouser, and I compare him to Noodles. Now, not everybody's going to have Noodles, but we do have a few more now. And for me, I think this card is very close to all those cards. I think Noodles was a bit better just because Noodles is so strong overall across the board. But Chris Sale really rocking some really good numbers compared to Carlton, where you lose a little bit of that V-left dominance, but you gain a lot better splits V-right. And so I think getting that control back V-right, that 7 points of control, is a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a new feature tonight. And before I show you guys the new feature, I want to thank Shifted for gifting out 5 more subs to the channel. Thanks so much for the support. And these ones are going to Tribal Mets fan, Aaron Mueller, 44, Walmart 71, Uochasm, and General Kenobit, the bold one. Love it.
Kenobi.
Kenobit.
Kenobi, like Star Wars.
Okay, Kenobi, the bold one. Wow. If you thought our baseball player pronunciations were bad, wait till you get to our username pronunciations. Well, here's the new feature. What Kidneys has done in his eminent brilliance as a modeler is he has given us the expected performance of this card. So it's right at the top of your screen inside the black box. And so this is what we're expecting based on Kidneys regression models here. Versus left, we're expecting dominance. We are expecting a FIP right at that 3 mark, which is right around where David Price hangs out. Now, versus right, we're expecting some bumpy roads. And as you look at our comps in the versus right table, this is in the neighborhood of what we'd expect. Right around that 5, maybe a little bit more than 5 area. And so much of what we've said, that this is a great card to deploy versus lefties, and one that you're going to need to be careful in how many times you match it up against righties, rings true.
Right, so just a few notes. This is as a starting pitcher. We don't have the relief pitcher stuff boost yet. I think probably one of the greatest things for this card is because of the high velocity and a really, really good lineup of high-cost pitches. I think this card's going to get a really big stuff boost. I don't know if it'll be as big as Carlton's, but certainly something that's going to help him out a lot. And I think this card is probably, definitely going to be a very good end-game bullpen piece for sure.
Absolutely. So next card we've got is Brooks Robinson. Holy cow, Brooks Robinson. Look at this. So whenever there's a third base card that drops, I'm almost by default not excited because I'm terrified of what I'm going to find within the defensive ratings. Whereas as a third baseman, we're going to have a really rough turn double play, or we're going to have a really rough range, and that's going to limit the overall utility and put a ton of pressure on the bat, a la Rogers Hornsby. And Hornsby, in his case, can pick up that pressure, take it, and run with it, and still be worthwhile of chucking out there at the hot corner. Although you probably wouldn't want to spend too much time with him at any other position in the infield. With this third base card, we have a legitimate middle infield glove. We've got 106 range and 112 arm. And as we talk about other middle infielders, we know that Cal Ripken, face of the franchise, does a real good job of logging a solid play percentage defensively in the middle of the field. And this card's rocking 6 more range than that. Now, where this is going to give some is on the turn double play. So this could finally be a nice litmus test for how important turn double play is for those middle infield positions. But this is absolutely a glove that on its surface looks like it belongs in the middle of a diamond. And then as we shift over to our batting profiles here, okay, well, if it can play middle infield, great. Well, can it hit? Can it hit better than the options that we see for right-handed batters in the middle of the field? And I'm talking about Luke Appling. I'm talking about Robin Yount. I'm talking about Cal Ripken, face the franchise. And we see a pretty interesting profile here. We've got good contact ratings, although not overwhelming, right at the 100 mark. And we see an okay avoid Ks, definitely not atrocious, but not great as well. And then we see a decent deficiency at I. Now, from a power perspective, we don't have too much there. So we're not getting into bird territory here from the power. So I see a lot to like here. I don't know that I see anything to love. And as I look at the bat similarity scores, the people that he's profiling most closely against are hitters that are hitting in the 600s within perfect league. So I think that I am excited for this card, although maybe it's a bit of tempered excitement. What about you?
So I compared this card's probably the most interesting card of the night to me, because the turn double play, like you mentioned, is low, but everything else is so high. And right away, I ran to see, is this card a better hitter than Yount? And I ran the numbers, and it was pretty overwhelmingly so. He's a better hitter than Yount. And then I'm like, okay, what other cards have around 106 range? We just got a bunch of them, right? So I compared to Vizquel. Does he hit better than Vizquel? Well, yeah, he does. How about Rabbit? He hits better than Rabbit. And then Huey Jennings. Even Huey Jennings, who has a lot less range but is known for being a pretty good middle infield hitter, he hits better than he does V left. So I think this card is phenomenal, and we'll see a ton of play at every level if you can get your hands on one. Chris kind of alluded to this possibly being the Gold Glove mission he was hinting at, so this may be a very hard card to obtain, but if this card is obtainable, I mean, you're going to play it for sure, I think.
Yeah, and I think let's be clear with what we're saying here. I don't think neither of us are saying that he's going to hit. This is not Rogers Hornsby. This is not Ty Cobb. This is a card that's going to play, debatably, got that out, a better defense in the middle of the infield than the other guys that are currently part of the meta, specifically Robin Yount and Cal Ripken. And I think that's true. I think he can play better defense, and I think he might also hit better. And so let's look at your projected triple slash here. We've got a versus left of 248, 291, 388, and a versus right of 225, 263, 361. Now, I don't know if you've done the legwork, and not to put you on the spot here, but how does that compare to your model's projections for what we see with, say, Yount or a Cal Ripken? And
I got it all up right here.
Perfect.
So let me pull up Cal for you because I did not have Cal as a comparison. Just because I like to avoid Cal like the plague because of that BABIP number.
That's because you're such a BABIP guy. I
am such a BABIP guy. But so let's compare that to Cal and Yount right here. So Yount, I have overall is a 215, 263, 615. Oh, you have what is that, average on base, and then what's the third number?
It's slugging. I had to calculate it because you're
I don't do slugging. Yeah. That's right. So I'm not going to be able to quote you slugging, but and then Ripken is a 235, 239, or 295. So Ripken's going to hit better than he is, for sure. But this card I think is way better defensively than Ripken. And the BABIP, like Jesse Rush is saying, this card has 68 BABIP, We saw that Gold Brooks Robinson get released last week with 29 BAPIP. There's quite a massive difference here, and I'm just really in love with this card. I think it's phenomenal. So he's definitely a better hitter than any of the other shortstops. I mean, they're all in the 215 to 220 average range and around 260 on base percentage, and you can see this card is just much better, right?
Absolutely. There's a question in the chat here from Joe A1010. Would a third base train in the middle as well as a middle trains at third base? And does the training even matter? You want to take that one?
Yeah, so training matters a lot. If you're not trained, you're going to have a lot less productiveness. I'm going to link you something in the chat. What this is this is a calculator. So if you make a copy of this and you put in the numbers for any player, it will output around like plus or minus 3 what their trained rating will be at a position. I think Davey made this. It's a very great tool. I've been having it for a long time, and I send it out to everybody I can that asks about these type of things, just because it's so handy to have on hand when a new card drops and you're trying to figure out where to play it. So I have Brooks training up to 130 at second and 117 at shortstop. So this is a card that can definitely play the middle infield.
And then one thing I would caution, though, is I honestly have stopped looking at position ratings. Like 115 at short, depending on the defensive ratings, is not equal to all 115 at shorts. If you have a high avoid error rating driving your skill, if you have a high turn double play driving your skill, that's not going to be the same asset as someone who's got wildly outlier range or an insane arm doing it, at least within the infield. So I really have started looking primarily at that range and arm. Now, we don't have many examples of shortstop caliber defenders that have low turn double play. So as I mentioned at the outset here, having this low of a turn double play, it'll be interesting to look at the data and see what type of impact that's having when deployed in the middle infield here. But really, range and arm are the two that historically have been the most important ratings for you to look at for an infielder defensively.
Absolutely, yes. Range is the most important by far. Some people are saying the chat, and height if you're a first baseman. So this card, I guess Brooks wasn't super tall. He gets up to 102 at first base, which is high, but his ratings are super high. The reason why I didn't compare him to Cal initially is 6 more range is a massive deal, especially if you're playing middle infield. If you're playing third base, not as much. But if we're talking about this card as a second baseman or a shortstop, which I think we are here, yep. He is really, really good defensively. He's got high BAPIP, he's got decent on base, and he can really hit pretty well versus lefties. So I think overall this card is going to be a mainstay.
Yeah, and let's not play this card at first base. First base, yeah. DH, left field, get guys out there that really produce a ton with the bat. You look at that expected triple slash in the top of your screen, you don't want that coming out of first base. The reason that this card is getting so much airtime right now as we're talking about it is because he can play at shortstop or second base. And if this was a third base only or a first base only or an outfield only or a DH only, we would already be on to the next card by now. So this is a middle infield glove, and we're debating how the bat production is going to compare to other options in that ilk right now. This isn't even a third baseman to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, maybe you play him at third base in like a super high defensive scenario. We're talking about, remember last week, if you have Bellinger and you have Ozzy and you're playing full defense, this could be your third baseman. I think very realistically, at least V left. So I think it's great. He's a really interesting card. He's a really unique card. I love seeing unique cards that can play.
Awesome. So we move on and we've got the Rocket. The Rocket Roger Clemens here, and a card that's extremely balanced from a right and left perspective, with no rating being more than 2 different as we go from strong side to weak side here, which is pretty interesting. We don't have a ton of right-handed pitchers with ratings that look like this versus left-hand pitchers, and that's the first thing I want to get you guys to focus on now. Look at that versus left table. So we've got Randy Johnson, Noodles Hahn, Ron Guidry, dominant lefty arms. That's what he's profiling most similar to. 3 out of our 5 highest hits there are lefty arms. Now, allow me to caution, he's not going to have the same efficacy because he's not a left-handed arm getting the double bump factor of being a lefty on a lefty. So he's definitely going to perform worse than those cards versus left. But it's interesting that that's who he's most closely profiling with. As we look at a righty, our closest righty is Satchel Paige, who was a super high stuff, low control righty arm, who is still used sometimes within Perfect League and is not doing horrible. He's at 442 on the FIP in my sample, and this card is that one with more stuff, with more movement, and with a ton more control, which, as we know from all of our past broadcasts, control being the most important metric. So this card is really going to be an asset versus left-hand pitching in a way that very few right-handed pitchers are. So let's look at the strong side. How is he going to be versus righties? Can he be dominant? And this is a less rosy picture, because this is basically the Bob Gibson SE card that we got a couple weeks ago, but just worse. So 3 less control, 2 less movement, 1 less stuff. The other way to look at it is that he's a Jose Fernandez with more control. And neither of those cards dominate righties. They definitely do well enough against righties. They're right at that 4 line on the FIP, which is definitely not a bad territory to be in. So I like this card. I would stop short of saying that this is part of your meta rotation, no questions asked. But I definitely think this card has a place in rotations and definitely has a place within bullpens. What do you think?
I think I might go a step farther than you. I think if the Bob Gibson SE from the playoff series is good enough to be kind of a mainstay in righty cheese rotations, and this card is that card, but with almost reverse splits, very neutral splits, I think we could see a very dominant performance out of this card. Wait till next year, throwing a really good point in the chat that the Walter Johnson comp overall. And I think this card might get a massive stuff boost, having high velocity. And look at his top 3 pitches. He's got 112 curveball, 100 fastball. So I think this card is a lethal weapon that you're probably going to have to play if you have access to him at the highest level.
Yeah, I don't know that we can trust Wait Till Next Year on Walter Johnson. I'm quite sure that I've seen Wait Till Next Year slander the production of his Walter Johnson time and time again within the DLL Discord. So I'm not sure what type of play he's making here in the chat. But I also don't know that he's going to get the same type of stuff boost. I mean, the velocity's there and it's good. It's 95 to 97, not 98 to 100 here. And then the fact that he's got 5 pitches here, I think that might also depress the overall stuff boost here. But definitely a card that I'm excited about, and a card that I think I'm more excited about in rotations, especially taking on some of those harder assignments against left-handed batters and doing so better than existing cards within the meta. Like definitely better than a Tom Seaver, definitely better than a Bob Gibson SE.
So I want to address, people are talking about comparing this card to Schoolboy Rowe because of a right-handed pitcher with really good splits in the chat. And I disagree with Jesse Rush. I think that Clemens is actually better V left than Schoolboy Rowe is. And I think that he's way better V right. So I actually think if you're somebody that likes Schoolboy Rowe in your rotation, this card heavily competes for that slot. And I think it might actually just straight up be better than Schoolboy Rowe.
That's Kidneys with a hot take. Hot take tonight from the Kidneys. And let's look at our expected Perfect League FIP for this one. Versus left, we've got a 4.2 number. And versus right, we've got a 4.09, which based on our similarity scores and based on our expected FIP of the comp cards within the similarity scores, feels about right to me. How does that feel to you?
That feels pretty good. I think it's probably comparing my model to observed data, I'm a little bit off on splits, tend to be a little bit more drastic than what I have shown. So expect probably a little bit worse V left and a little bit better V right. But overall, I think this card is going to be just dominant. And I think those expected numbers show it. That this is a weapon that you're definitely going to want to utilize if you're in Perfect League.
So let me stop you there. You keep using that D word. You keep saying dominant. And I want to hone in on if you really mean dominant or you just mean incredibly useful or incredibly applicable and versatile in being able to be deployed. Do you really think that this card is going to log a sub 3.5 FIP versus either side?
I think out of the bullpen V right, yes.
Heard it here
100%.
first, folks. Sub 3.5 FIP out of Roger Clemens in the bullpen. We'll have the data in a couple weeks to confirm or deny. But I love you going on the record. All right, next we've got Billy Hamilton. I think we got the order mixed up here, but that's okay. We'll save Vlad for last. But we've got Billy Hamilton here. And the first thing you notice on this card is that it can fly. It's a card with 100 speed, even better stealing, even better base running. And then from a defensive perspective, coming with a lot of stock defense. 102 stock center field rating, 95 in left, and even giving you some right. So very versatile card in terms of being deployable at all three positions right out of the box here. Now the range is only 95, and I say only because that's really below the standard that we need for center fielders in Perfect League today. We need a Mays type card. We need a Ken Griffey, and this is well short of that. And so if this is going to be considered in center field, that bat had better be doing a ton of work. And if it's not going to be in center field, then that bat had better be even doing more work. And as we look at the bat, we definitely have a platoon here. So you'd only want to deploy it versus right-hand pitching. And you see a card that's got a pretty decent shape. So the contact higher than the power. You got a really strong eye who's going to float your on-base percentage. And then a workable avoid K at 84. So it definitely doesn't look bad. I just don't know that it's enough. And our bat similarity score table has a couple of hits here in the 70s. As I was trying to get a comp here, I was thinking he's kind of like a left-handed Jackie with a bit too much power and weakness in avoid K. But what do you think with Hamilton?
I just want to throw out there, because I'm seeing people talk about in the chat, no gap power. Gap power is utterly, almost completely meaningless. It is probably one of the lowest value stats on the entire chart to maybe like sacrifice bunt and bunt for hit. Like you're going to find better what a player does out of like the gap power by looking at maybe his speed and his base running almost. Gives me a better knowledge. That's how like I calculate triples and things like that. So gap power is pretty low value, so it's not the concern on this card. The concern on this card for me is, how did Billy Hamilton get 90 power? The 90 power really hurts his BABIP a bit, and I would rather see a card this fast have a higher on base percentage than I would see him have a higher slugging percentage, right? Because that's the trade-off you're going to make. I don't really think this card sees any play as much as it hurts me. I love Billy Hamilton as a player. I wish he was a bit faster. Compared to Ricky, he just doesn't hold up that much. And yeah, I get, arrows and all that. And Ricky really is truly the fastest player I think we have. But he just doesn't hit well enough for me to justify putting him in the corner outfield. I don't think he plays center field ever. I just think 95 is too low. So, yeah.
Yeah, and as we look at your expected triple slash here, let's focus just on the versus right, because that's how you'd be deploying this one. Comes in at a 237, 326, 368. So the on-base percentage definitely not horrible, but there's not a ton of slugging to go with it. And so, and the average also very low at 237. Now, how do you see observed stats compared to your platoons? If we were expecting, I know this is coming out of your model, but if you were to draw a line in the sand, would you expect the VR to be slightly better on any one particular category or better across the board? What do you normally observe?
I tend to run lower than expected across the board. I think it happens a bit when I'm normalizing so many people. So I would expect a little bit better production than what you see, but I think comparing people in my model to other people in my model is always a good way to go, right? If you're comparing my model to observed, it'll be a little funky. I would boost people a little bit. But I think this card compares to me a lot from the Ashburn we got earlier in this collection, where you have a hitter that can kind of run, who's got good on base versus right, and pretty okay defense in the corners, right? Pretty great defense in the corner. So the issue for me is Ashburn just has a way higher BABIP of 19 points higher. He's got a 93 versus 74. He's got a higher average versus right. It's a 270 to a 237. He's got a higher on base. His slugging is worse, but I would probably rather take Ashburn in every scenario. And then I'm assuming your other corner outfielder is Gwynn, because you need to have Gwynn on your team in every scenario, in my opinion. And so I just don't see a place for this card. I really want to love this card. It is my favorite because I had the 97, I believe, Billy Hamilton on my team for years and years. He did fantastic for me and gave me so much production out of that left field slot. But I don't think this quite makes the cut.
And call out to Jedi in the chat, gifting out a sub to No Rhaegar 49. Welcome to the clubhouse there, No Rhaegar. We've got Walnut calling you out saying, hey, why is this your favorite? We've got T-Chuck, and you actually said something I wanted to dig into a little bit. So you said gap power doesn't matter. Now, is that in more of, say, a neutral park versus a boosted extra base hit park? Or is that an order of operations based argument you're making? Dig in a little bit further there. I think people would be interested to hear how you make that argument.
Yeah, sure. So if you run numbers on like the individual values of different statistics, different ratings compared to like WOBA or something, right? Like what is the player going to output compared to those ratings? Or even just if I run gap power versus doubles, the correlation is super low. The R squared is very low. So what that means is that gap power is not really the influencer. A better influencer, even over doubles, is just how often the card hits for contact, is how many doubles you're going to get. A lot of the time is what I've found.
So if you see a card with a wild gap power here, that's not really the same asset as a card with a wild contact or a wild eye. And we'll save power for a different conversation. But that's the core of what you're saying here, that it's just not that much of a driver in success, that overall contact and just being able to get the roll of, okay, you've got a base hit. Now, what type of base hit it is way more important than having one that's going to increase the percentage of time that base hit goes for a double or a triple.
Exactly, right. And triple is also not correlated to bat power. It's correlated to speed. And then base running is like often your success rate. So if it's a double, they have like kind of a chance to go for a triple, I believe is how it works. But it's just really gap is something I don't even look at when I'm evaluating a card. I kind of just cross it off my screen. It's not very valuable, and it doesn't really estimate doubles and triples very well at all. So
very interesting stuff. Next, we've got 102 Vlad. He finally made it, Walnut. You got your card. That was a good moment. I appreciated the long and drawn out troll job by Chris. I don't know. I don't know if Walnut knew exactly what was going on there, but Tebow being the vehicle to the troll, I absolutely support. So well done, Mr. Jardine. That was as fun as I hoped it would be, and I hope that Walnut got as much of a kick out of it as anyone. What do you think of Vlad here?
I think Vlad is sadly just a little bit worse than Clemente, and we don't have to talk about it too much for my boy Walnut, but I'm so happy we got this card. If you guys didn't know, I posted a while back in the Discord that if we did get this card for Walnut, I will cut all my hair off and try and do my best DRC impression. So I will be buzz cutted next time you see me. Maybe it'll have grown back in a little bit by then, but no, overall, I'm just
Bald
happy
Bros.
Yeah.
Bald Bros baseball stream.
Yep.
Rebrand in progress.
And yes, he will be going down on my sheet, Walnut, as 102, and he will not be changed, as much as people will probably tell me I mistyped his overall.
Yeah, so let's talk about this card for just a minute here. It's a card with pretty even splits on each side. You've got a touch more contact on the VL, and he's definitely going to hit better VL because he is a right-handed batter. You've got a profile that's going to run the bases pretty well, not steal a ton of bases. And then an arm-dominant defensive profile. I think this could be a very fun card to run for Vlad enthusiasts, and I absolutely expect we'll see one within the DLL once Walnut has an opportunity to do so. But I don't expect him to be a meta breaker by any means here. And as we look at the expected triple slash, we do have a pretty decent slug on here, especially VL. We got 252, 292, 420. So a bat that can run into a ball and put the ball over the fence and win some games for you that way. But one that's going to hurt you from an on-base percentage. And then as you look at the cards that you would need to sit to put Vlad out there, and we're talking about like a Tony Gwynn here or a Ricky Henderson or a Hank Aaron. You're just not going to do that unless you are that Vlad enthusiast.
So we just got the missions live, and they are actually all really easy to complete, I think, except for the Vladimir. The Brooks Robinson one's going to have a nasty bottleneck, but you only need 4 cards from last week's gold collection to do it. And so you can do it without a diamond. Chris Sale is actually like live cards and cards that have played pretty recently, which is pretty cool. Clemens is Cy Young Award winners in the 80s, and that's pretty obtainable too with just 3 diamonds. And then Billy Hamilton is a lot of older cards that probably a lot of people locked for face of the franchise. So that's also a pretty reasonable mission. So I quite like these missions this time around. I think the other ones were a bit too hard for the reward, but I think this time we did a much better job. Vladimir takes, how many is that? That's 2 diamonds to complete, or 3 diamonds to complete. So not overall the hardest mission either. I think these are pretty well balanced. I like these a lot.
Awesome. Can't wait to dig into those and see if I can't get my hands on one of these cards sooner rather than later. All right, so that is the set. Achievement unlocked number 3. My favorite card being Vladimir for sentimental reasons. Your favorite card being Billy Hamilton. But I think that we got 3 really interesting cards that could be used with Roger Clemens, Brooks Robinson, and Chris Sale. And depending on the conversion rates and the redemption rates on these special editions, I think we'll start seeing them permeate high-level play immediately. And it'll be great to start seeing the data on them and how well they're playing. What other thoughts do you have to close out Achievement Unlock number 3?
I really like this round. It's probably my favorite round. I think we got pretty unique cards all across the board. The Vladimir has been a fan favorite for a very long time. If you haven't seen Walnut talk about it, you haven't been on Discord enough, in my opinion. Clemens and Sale are very powerful starting pitchers that don't quite follow the typical mold, so I love that. And then Brooks is very unique. He's a third baseman type profile, but he could probably play middle infield. So I think we got some great cards tonight, and it's probably some of my favorites.
Wow. And Walnut just dropped a bomb on the chat with an absolute bit bomb that splashed down 3,000 bits and 25 emotes being shared with the channel. Thank you so much for the support, Walnut. Congrats on getting your long-awaited 102 Vlad. I'm sure this card art here done by Daniel Wallner is just an error, and the 102 will be updated there. But either way, you're going to get your Vlad and get to play with him, and I couldn't be more excited for you.
He also dropped 5,000 bits earlier, so he's been at it tonight.
Holy cow, Walnut winning the bit war, that's for darn sure. All right, so what do we have now? We're done with the set, and so now we move into OK Boomer, OK Zoomer, which is everyone's favorite game show. The spirit of the show is I show Kidneys 3 things from the 90s for him to identify. He will try to do so, he will fail. And then he's going to show me one silly and crazy Zoomer meme from today, and we'll try to make sense of it. Let's get started. First one. This one comes from B. Phil B. And he is a Cardinals fan, which puts him on the downside for me, but he's also a great guy, which picks him right back up. And his contribution is this. This is a boot. This was a very popular boot in the 90s. Who is the maker of said boot? They were everywhere. Everyone wanted them. Extremely popular. They're still around today, but don't have quite the same fanfare.
I don't actually know. I do not know.
Final answer. Kidney says he does not know. And that means 0 for 1 and 1 for 1 for B-Phil. These are Doc Martens. I never owned a pair myself, but I knew many people who did. 0 for 1.
Definitely never heard of them.
Next one, and this one comes from Wait Till Next Year. I think he's batting 1,000 in stumping you. He's either batting 1,000 or 0. I can't recall.
He's batting 1,000. He was bragging about it earlier in Discord.
Okay, so he's 2 for 2, and he's going for 3 for 3 here. Let's see how he does. His submission is this. What is this that was extremely popular within the 90s?
That hurts my eyes to look at, so I'm glad it's not around nowadays.
If I told you that it was a book that you could buy, does that help?
No. Now I'm lost. I thought it was like a rug.
No, so no credit and no points awarded for this one. This was the Magic Eye book series, which was a series of 3D illustrations where you'd buy the book and every page you'd turn would have a different thing that looked like this. And if you crossed your eyes in just the right way, you would emerge an image. So this particular one here might have had who knows, a snowman in it or something. And it was a whole book of stuff like that. And it was extremely frustrating when you couldn't get your eyes just right to be able to see it. And the person sitting next to you was like, oh yeah, snowman, really easy. I don't know what your problem is. But those books, I don't know that they're still around today.
That hurts my head to look at. I'm glad they're not around.
Last but not least, this one coming from Fabtron. He has got a product, a retail product, sold on infomercials across the United States here. That's none other than Suzanne Summers, I believe, doing the modeling there of this product. Do you have any idea what this is?
Yes, because I'm pretty sure my mother had one, but I don't remember the name of it. And that is hurting me. So I've had this. I think I used this back in my baseball days even, but I don't know what the name is.
Were you working on your thighs back in those baseball days?
I guess, yeah. I had pretty bad knees, so I was trying to strengthen those, but
well, that makes sense because this was the Thigh Master. A rare 0 for 3 for kidneys. The community batting 1,000 tonight and setting me up to be in a really good position to grab an easy win if I get any points here on the OK Boomer piece. Rough day for the kidneys. All right, so this is the OK Boomer meme, and what we have here appears to be a video, and it appears to be a Cubs game.
And strike 3 called.
This is a painful memory you're bringing back to me.
Oh, yes.
This was the 2015 NLCS sweep. And now we're getting rickrolled.
I've wanted to do this for so long.
So I'm well familiar with the online practice of rickrolling. Now, my understanding of it is that you play a video, which is teeing up something to be satisfying to the person you're sending it. So, you know, in the case of me, I would think you would have had, say, the play that the Cubs won the World Series, and right before Rizzo catches the ball at first base from Chris Bryant to have the Cubs win the World Series and everyone dogpile, then you would rickroll. So I'm a little surprised to see the rickroll on the back end of a crushing Cubs defeat. But am I missing anything above and beyond with the intent of this Zoomer meme?
No, I just wanted to make you suffer before I rickrolled the stream, and I am very happy.
Okay, well, I think that I nailed this one to a T as far as what it was. And so this was a resounding sweep for the Boomers and a win for the chat because you guys did a fabulous job with your submissions tonight.
It was a worthy loss. I've always wanted to rickroll a mass amount of people, and getting 370 people to be rickrolled at my hand is quite the win in my book.
That's a win indeed. So that concludes tonight's OK Boomer, OK Zoomer with a big win. So thanks everyone for your help. All right, so next, right before we get into the holiday wish list, I've got something new that I want to share with you guys. So we have come up with a new offering for you guys. What the new offering is, and we're going to call it Tinker Every Chance, a play on the Cubs' Tinker to Evers to Chance, a double play combination from the turn of the century. And what this is it's a premium Discord, and it's an avenue to get access to information across all of the disciplines of Perfect League, team strategy, tournaments, card comparison, game economy, everything you want and more. And the reason that we're coming out with this, the reason that we're bringing this to you guys is that I get a ton of questions, as do many people online, and And I think about all the people that aren't even comfortable asking those questions. And anyone who's come to me for help in the past knows that I'm not always that fast in getting your response. And oftentimes I'm not even the best guy for a given question. So what I wanted to do is pull together experts who could form effectively a group, a coalition, if you will, of people who can serve those that are looking for that advice. And maybe they haven't joined on with another group and they're already talking about this sort of thing, or they just don't have an avenue to get to that high level information within the game. And so the goal here is to build a community and really lower the barrier to entry to high-end game knowledge. So again, we're calling it Tinker Every Chance. And really the play there is that what we're going to preach within this premium Discord channel is tinkering with your roster, being data-driven, looking at the information. If something's not working, try something different. Look at what the data is telling you in terms of how you want to mold this tournament roster, or how you want to mold your main league team, or how you might want to change your stadium setup for the coming year based on the cards that you have, and really build a community to have success there. And chance, really, to me, speaks to the fact that there is still going to be some luck involved. There's no strategy you can employ to win every sim. There's no strategy you can employ to always get the right side of a matchup, even when you get everything right. And with packs being involved in the game, chance is always going to be a part of it. And we also recognize the fact that no one is sitting around with unlimited amounts of time. So that's kind of the spirit with which we're coming from. I will link in the chat by the time we're done tonight for anyone who wants to take a peek at that and check it out. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up on the Discord. But excited to bring you guys that new offering for those that are interested. And last, let's close up with PT22 Holiday Wish List, which is a segment that we're going to do for all of the things that we would love to see under the Christmas tree for Perfect Team 22. Kidneys and I have both curated a list of 5, and we will bring them to you one by one here tonight. So my first one, and this is actual authentic handwriting here. My first gift that I'd love to receive under the Christmas tree is for them to blind the opener follower to the opponent. I've already ranted on this. I've already soapboxed, so I won't rehash all of those talking points. But this doesn't exist within Major League Baseball, and I don't see any reason for it to exist within Perfect Team. The way that you deploy your pen, whether you want to start with the starter for a couple innings and go to a reliever afterward, whether you want to do something different, that's not something that is exchanged when lineups are exchanged in Major League Baseball. And I don't think that should be the case within Perfect League. The reason that the pseudo starter became a thing in the first place was because this wasn't blinded. Using openers could be a perfectly fine tact and could work just as it's intended and just as it does in Major League Baseball. If this was blinded to opponents and people would just use it all the time, there wouldn't be any reason to need to pseudo start. And so now we've ended up in this weird and awkward place where pseudo starting is inconsistent. And depending on if you 3 batter face or 6 batter face or 9 batter face, you have ranging efficacy levels of actually getting the right trigger to the opposite lineup. And honestly, it's all over architected. Let's just undo it all. If you just blind the opener follower, it's going to solve all of our problems, and people will be able to deploy their pitchers as they want to. And people that feel susceptible to this type of tactic will build a more balanced roster to be prepared for it. And I think that would help with regards to how splitty the game is, and it would help with regards to lowering how often you need to be babysitting your pitching rotation and babysitting your rotation as you're deploying your team. And I think it just ends up in a better product. Kidneys, before you open your first gift here, do you have any reaction or thoughts on that?
No, I agree. I think, as accurate as we're trying to be and as fun, as a game, you have to take some liberties. But, I mean, if you look at a real baseball environment, I mean, you don't tell somebody you're going to, switch your pitcher after 2 innings when you do it, or after 3 batters when you're going to do it, right? They have to figure that out and predict it themselves. So I think there's enough counterplay involved with 7-day lineups and managing your lineup that way, that if you're a good manager, you should be able to counteract fallen or opener pretty well. And so I think that for sure, this is something that should be rehashed by Out of the Park.
Awesome. We will move on to yours now, and I realize that I built the slide covering our faces here, or blocking the text, so I'll go ahead and hide us as we go through these. Next, and this is authentic handwriting. Kidneys wrote this. It says, "Make live cards great again." What do you mean by that?
So I've been pushing the MLCGA movement for a long time. If I can get some hashtags in the chat, that would be great. Live cards for too long, I think, have been too undervalued, where players like Mike Trout, who are some of the greatest players of all time, we got pitchers like Max Scherzer, Clayton Kershaw. There's some unbelievable live players right now, and they're just not good. And it's not even that they're bad players or they don't predict well or whatever. But, you have to, I think, boost the normalization across the board and make it so that they have a higher baseline and they actually come out looking okay and playable. It'd be so fun if we had live cards that were interesting choices and every tournament wasn't just listed with historical cards.
Awesome. Next, we've got a couple more gifts here on my side. Let's move the long sim back. So who in the chat knows what I'm talking about here? Who in the chat has felt the desire or has also shared this wish that the long sim would be back? So first, let me define what the long sim is. So at the very end of a season, there must be numerous things going on the server side for Out of the Park, because the final sim of a season at whatever the final game is for the World Series takes 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 25 minutes, sometimes more. And I am completely sensitive and understanding that there's probably a ton of stuff going on within that sim. The problem lies within the fact that you lose all of the drama. So oftentimes, whether you're in a diamond league or a gold league or whatever, God forbid, the perfect league, and the series is 3-1, everyone would love it if there was drama as to who's going to win that game 5. And if we get long simmed, then a part of that drama falls off. A part of that drama falls off because we know that it's 99% likely, and we have been faked out by fake long sims in the past, but we know that it's extremely likely that the team that was winning 3-1 has gone ahead and finished it off. And then just from a cadence perspective, from a momentum perspective, having that huge time delay there kind of breaks the momentum of the playoff series itself. All right, next we've got Kidneys, and he's got perfect point achievements in tournaments. Tell us about that.
So I have perfect point achievements in tournaments. The only issue I have here, I'll just try and get it off the bat, is you have the issue of people would probably build certain lineups to try and generate PP in tournaments, which would ruin the integrity a little bit. I don't see that happening too much. Because I still think if you made tournament rewards greater at the same time, people would be incentive to win tournaments. But I think for too long, you see all sorts of fun, crazy things happen in tournaments, and there's no reward for them, or you just miss eighth place and you don't get any payout. I think tournaments are a big time investment, and I think there should be payout for it.
Next, we got a couple more gifts here. Wow. Santa Grish was so kind to us this year. All right, so my one here is not my idea. I want to say Quanta Condor threw it in a Perfect League World Series chat probably over a couple months ago. And I loved it from the moment that he shared it. And so let me walk you guys through it here. So he came up with the idea that the stuff boost shouldn't just be something that naturally kicks in when someone is called in on relief, but rather it should be an option. It should be a checkbox for you. Do you want the stuff boost or do you not? And if you click yes on the stuff boost, then your stamina is going to drain as a stuff boosted reliever would. So if your Bob Feller gets a 40-point stuff boost in the pen and you choose to go with it, you're not going to be able to use him as a follower and pick up 7 innings of pitching out of him because he's going to be tired after 2. And I thought it was a brilliant way of actually and accurately accounting for the fact that when someone is airing it out within the bullpen, they are getting a stuff boost. They are able to raise their K per 9. They are able to pitch differently and focus on a couple of their pitches instead of having to have a 3-4 pitch repertoire and kind of save themselves over the course of 6-7 innings, while not making anything overpowered within the game. So I'd be really curious to hear if the chat likes that one. I think it would solve some problems within the game. It would give more choice to the owner, to the manager. And I think more choice is almost always a good thing. And it would be something very easy to regulate and manage. Kidneys, what do you think of that one? I don't think we've talked about this.
I think it's great. I'm actually a fan of just scrapping stuff boost altogether. I think starting pitchers are good enough out of the pen that they don't need an advantage. And you see a lot of pens play pretty much all starting pitchers except for 1 or 2 or 3 very overcosted relief pitchers we have, like Hoffman and Rivera. So I would be all for just getting rid of it altogether. But I think the ability to choose the stuff boost or the stamina drain is a great compromise and makes sense based on how pitchers throw in real life.
Yeah, I think it's the most logical solution I've heard. Like, yes, if you want to argue that Pedro, when he's pitching as a starter, is 150 stuff, fine. Pedro was incredible. He was 150 stuff. But if you are going to throw him in the pen and pitch him in 1 and 2 inning bursts, and you want to tell me that he goes to 180, sure, I'm going to believe that. Absolutely. But the one thing I can't believe is that anyone could have a significant boost going into relief and throwing 7-6 innings like that. That's just not realistic, and that's kind of breaking the spirit of the stuff boost in general. Next, we've got yours, and it says pinch hit reliever against X hand. And I didn't clarify this one. I'm actually curious to hear what you mean by this.
So what I mean by this is have an option where it says, I only want, I'm looking through my team right here, Richie Ashburn to pinch hit against right-handed pitching. And that's because Richie Ashburn has really giant splits and is a lot worse V left than V right. So I want this option, not just for hitters, but for relievers to say only come in, obviously of the 3-batter minimum, but only come in against the opposite hand if I wanted to, right? Mm-hmm. And I think this would be a really cool tool that would utilize some more utility out of your players and make you feel like you're managing the game a bit better yourself.
You know, I've had the thought of something in similar spirit in the past, and I think it could potentially accomplish the same goal here, but I had the idea that you could just have a don't allow to face X option. So let's say you have a right-handed relief pitcher, and there's a don't allow to face lefty batters option. And if you have that clicked, then when they're facing a lefty, if they're able to be pulled, your coach will pull them. And I think that it would probably help, or it would probably go along with what you're saying here, because if that's checked, then they wouldn't be brought in ever to face a lefty because they're on a do not disturb effectively when any offhand person comes up. And of course, if there's a 3-batter minimum, if they were brought on to face a righty and then the next batter's a lefty, they're going to have to face them because those are the rules of baseball. But just having an option that prohibits them from facing the offhand whenever it is a choice, I love the idea there, and I think that's kind of what you're working towards.
Yep, for sure. So I think more options, and even as Jefferson Jim is saying in the chat, this would probably be a much better version of the specialist role too, as we see that not work a lot of the time properly. So I just think it'd be a cool thing to have.
Next, couple more gifts here, and mine just says more data. And this can be applied to so many different things. It could be as simple as allowing layered data. And by layered data, I mean we can currently look at versus left. We can currently look at road, but we can't look at versus left and road. So being able to do that sort of thing would be extremely valuable. But also, I just love insight into things that have happened within the perfect team universe. I would love to be able to go and then sort and see who's got the most tournament wins and silver best of sevens, and see that it's not wait till next year, and see his little heart break. I would love that. That would be a blast for me. Being able to just navigate what's going on in all corners of the perfect team universe and having data to back it up and having the ability for people to work their way up. Like, let's say you want to get into a discipline and you set a goal for yourself. You know, I want to be top 10 in bronze best of 3 wins by the end of next month. and then you grind your way there, and you're able to kind of see on the achievement boards how well you're doing. And I think that there's just, this community loves data. That's no secret. I've never seen a community, and I've spent time in fantasy football communities, fantasy baseball communities, like communities that love data, but none love data nearly as much as this out of the park perfect team community does. And I just know that people would run with that. They would love it. They would interact with it. It would deepen the overall experience.
I agree. I think probably the biggest thing on this list for me is giving us split data in tournaments. I think tournaments are too much of an integral part in the game now that we don't have split data in tournaments. What that means is we don't see the stats for a player V left or V right. It's just all meshed together. And if you're somebody who's trying to accurately model the game or accurately observe the game, it's very hard to interpret that kind of data when it's all meshed up. And I just want to give a shout out to our boy Angered Unicorn in the chat. If you haven't checked out his streams, he does really cool breakdowns of tournament data, and this is the kind of thing that would help him out a lot, because he's just a fantastic player and does a lot of really cool stuff with that. So check him out if you haven't seen him already.
I would echo that sentiment entirely. And I believe he just picked up some new Excel skills, so that game could even be ramping up a little bit there. I wouldn't be surprised if he's bringing some new bells and new whistles to future streams. Not to put that upon you, Angered Unicorn. All right, and so your gift here is more defensive cards earlier in the game cycle. Why?
Why? So we got the Gold Glove collection, the Golden collection, whatever it was, last week, and it was awesome. But to be honest, we're at the end of the game cycle. A lot of these cards, they're not super hitters. They're just great gloves, and I would have loved to see them earlier on in the cycle because it just gave us more options. Too long we've been running Pop Lloyd and Ozzie Smith at shortstop and then whoever else at second base, and it's just always been like such a consistent spot that you don't have to think about because you have such a limited option that I just want to see more of those cards. Right now there's only one or two center fielders you can play, and if we got a few more of them earlier on, I mean, back in the day there were almost none of them you can play really compared to what we have now. So I just think if we got more defensive options earlier on, it would lead to more unique roster choices.
Yeah, I completely agree. I would have loved to have seen that Rabbit Marinville spread around leagues this entire time, and really so many of those defensive cards, just seeing how the meta would play out. Let's say in a world where there's as many Mark Belangers as there are Aussies, like who do people use? Who gets more market share? Who performs better? You know, do the range hounds go Belanger, and the people who are trying to maintain some semblance of an offensive production go Ozzy? Like having that earlier in the game cycle would be really cool. I'd agree with you.
End of the game cycle, Lobat. I just mean like, you know, we got about a month of content left, and then we got a few months, and then 22 comes out, you know, there isn't a whole lot of time really relatively left to, if we got some really cool cards like Rabbit and Vizsgel and Bellinger really early on, and let people have time to play with them and, you know, decide who's a better hitter versus who's a better defender and what do you want to play and what sacrifices do you want to make, right?
Yeah, no, I'm entirely sensitive to Chris's challenge as a content creator. Like, no matter what he does, there will always be wants, whether it's 102 Vlad or defensive cards earlier in the cycle or some other things that we have coming up here. You know, there's no way to be perfect. But I think that small things like this, you know, having more alternatives, because Ozzy's kind of been the gold standard and gold bearer for so long, I think that's something that could potentially be looked at. All right, next we have got front load game cycle with struggling profiles. So another commentary here about the ordering of the people, and this is again not my idea, but one that I loved. So we know that the out of the park engine doesn't love certain profiles. We know that Barry Bonds has a hard time being productive. We know that Babe Ruth has a hard time being productive, but those guys are absolutely some of the best baseball players of all time. And so I would love, and the person whose idea this was, and I'm sorry I didn't denote it, so if it's yours, go ahead and claim it in the chat. But I would love for there to be a segment of the meta, a segment of time where those cards were huge producers. And I think we had a bit of that with the Team of the Decade Ruth when he came out then. He got a really good extended run as a left fielder. But I think those bird profiles, those power-heavy profiles, those contact-struggling profiles, if they are earlier in the game cycle, before we've had a chance for some of these beastly cards that can't be trifled with at this point, I think that we'd have more ability to play those cards. And I think that would be really cool to have a difference-making Barry Bonds in a given league as you're working your way up or as you're building your team, or a difference-making Babe Ruth that is hands down the best hitter in a league in a given season. Next, we have got more pitching stats diversity. Uncap all stats. What do you mean by that?
Sorry, typing the chat. So what I mean is I don't want to see stuff has no cap. It doesn't stop at 128. It just goes up and up and up and up. I want to see movement and control not have that 128 cap, not have that baseline. I just want to see pitchers right now are so hard to model because they're so close together. Everybody has around the 80 to 90 movement, like 90 to 100 control, and they got, some number of stuff in there. But the stuff is actually unique, and it's easy to pick out, what pitchers are going to get strikeouts. But comparably to the other ones, it's really hard. Cards are going to let up more home runs, or how big that difference is going to be. And I think we could get so much more diversity if they uncapped that potential and just let them fly loose and have a bigger baseline to go from, so you could select more cards on the slide.
Yeah, I think that makes sense for sure. So that does it for our holiday wish list. Any closing thoughts there before Chris wraps all these up and puts it under your tree and lets you open it in March?
Oh, I hope not, man. I think it would rue the day I get influence and perfect team. We would never get such beauties as 77 Andrelton Simmons. Yeah, I don't know, because you have to remember, guys, that it's relative. So it's not like 170 contact batter just hits better than 128 contact batter, right? If the 170 contact batter is the highest contact in the league, it's the same as the 128 being the highest contact in the league, right? So that's really where I'm coming at with it.
Yep, and I see people mentioning things within the chat. It was really, really hard for me to get down to the 5 things that I wanted to do most. There are absolutely other areas that I'd love to see changes, whether I didn't feel as strongly about them or I didn't feel that they were as achievable. I left some stuff on the editing room floor. So sorry if I didn't represent your particular thing that you wanted to make sure was discussed tonight, but I'm sure you have multiple avenues to express that opinion yourself. So as we wrap up the stream here, let's call out the incredible generosity that we saw of support throughout the entire evening here. We had Mac Jacks, Chuck, Wait Till Next Year Shifted, Rocketer, Longhorn, and Jedi all gifting out subscriptions. Thank you all. Really, really appreciate it. That certainly helps the channel grow and helps us keep producing this content. And then from a cheer perspective, from a bit perspective, we had Walnut with his best night, his wildest night ever. Incredible support on the night that really belonged to him as he got his 102 flight. He's probably smoking a cigar somewhere in celebration. And then besides him, we had Crash SF Giants, Rocketer, API, and MK Sen also supporting the broadcast. So a huge thank you to everyone for all of your support this evening. We definitely appreciate it. If you were new to the broadcast, please do drop us a follow. Please click the notification bell so that you know when we go live in the future. And we'd love to have you with us for all the various broadcasts. As a reminder, this show will not be on next week because Chris's show is not on next week, so we'll have no content to analyze. But we will be back that following week, and we'll be better than ever.
Giveaway?
Oh my gosh!
We did.
We forgot the giveaway.
Chat want to waste some free PP, so why don't we get that?
That's a bait and switch. We were talking about a giveaway, and all of a sudden we're talking about gifts. Giveaway is open. Exclamation point ticket. That's how you enter. We're going to let that run for a couple minutes. If you win, the way that you get your perfect points is you message me on Discord and you tell me what your perfect team username is with the correct capitalization. And then typically by morning, you will have your perfect points, and don't spend it all in one place. So Kidneys, as we wrap up the stream tonight, what additional thoughts and closing thoughts would you have?
I don't know. I kind of wish I didn't blow all my money on packs on stream Saturday and get absolutely nothing out of it, because there's some really cool missions tonight that I would love to complete, but I'll get there when I get there. I think Sale would be a great addition to my Lefty Cheese team. I think Brooks is just good on any team. So I think it's just really cool. I'm excited to see what New Year's content we have out of Chris, what crazy thing he'll do for New Year's. You gotta one up the Santa hat, Chris. Gotta do something better. So,
on a scale of 1 to 10, how crushed are you about your OK Boomer, OK Zoomer goose egg?
It wasn't a goose egg. I rickrolled like 300 people. I'm very happy.
Fake news. Kidneys is claiming victory.
Oh, I said no matter what happens tonight, I win.
Well, kudos to you, and maybe next week you can get one more. I'm definitely going to have to source them from the community again, because their submissions are proving to be way stronger than my submissions.
Be scared. Swecky and I have 2 weeks to cook up something, so
yeah, that does concern me.
We're already been plotting about it.
That does concern me. All right, we're going to close down the giveaway in 3 seconds. Exclamation point ticket, and we are closed. 3 winners coming at you. First one is Dangerous Dean 7. I think that's a multi-winner, a repeat winner. Next is Pete Drew D, or Pete Drood, or Peted Rude, or Peted Dre WD. And last but not least is Maverick RLS 20. Congratulations to you guys. Again, message me on Discord. Hit me up with your perfect team username with the appropriate capitalization, and then I will get you those perfect points as soon as we get a chance. And Walnut has the last word. Vlad. Congrats to you, buddy. And thanks to everyone else for watching. With that said, Kidneys and I are out.